Nubook 1, From Then to Now, Part 4. In a matter of moments, everyone was back on their horses and ready to ride. I let the troop go first, and I would tag along behind for a while, and let the dust settle from the drama that took place. The Indian was well strapped to his horse, actually the cavalry's horse. Two of the soldiers gathered the other stolen horses as we rode out. The local Indians watched us very closely as we rode by them. Once again they did not look too happy, but they did not say a word as we headed out. I again felt the gift of the great eagle that allowed me to be raised away from places like this. I loved my people, but they always had the chance to move into a better awareness of their own if they really and sincerely wanted to. The sun was rising higher in the eastern sky as it looked to be another hot and dusty day on the trail back. The entire scene was a picture that you could hang on a wall as the surroundings all blended together. As we rode out onto the wide open stretches of gently rolling lands. I was bringing up the rear for a reason. I was to warn the men if any of the Indians were to follow us and become hostile. I was rather surprised they didn't do something, because, on other occasions, they would suddenly ride after us and try to scare us, and then usually back off after a shot was fired from one of the soldiers. It was usually a scene that played itself out almost the same every time, but not this time. My two friends, Jess and Riley, had to maintain their own positions. They were not allowed to leave the formation. I was the Indian scout, so I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. The sun was rising higher in the sky, and it was going to be even hotter than it had been. When that sun is overhead, it seems to just stay there, as though it won't go down. This was a lifetime of real endurance. The great eagle wanted all his feathers to be strong and prepared for what my grandfather called the journey to real freedom. He taught my dad and mum, and then they taught me. I was to be a destiny that all the races of the world would benefit from. I was also told that there would be a special white-winged man before me who would come to the earth in the next century. He would also be my teacher when I returned to take my position. Until then, I had a lot of learning to accomplish from the real guides. As I watched the sun aflame in the sky for what seemed to be the longest time, I could see that it was finally deciding to go down at some point. We had been riding for hours, and I could tell the men were getting antsy to stop and rest. The sergeant was a real hard soldier. He liked to push on until he would almost drop. If he wanted to ride all day and night, then everyone else had to do the same. I was born to ride, and I could sleep on the saddle, and many times I did, but the heat was no fun. I could even leave my body and then return while I was riding. After about 8 hours of riding, the sergeant signalled for us to stop and rest for the night. We stopped by the same river we had crossed on the way to the Indian camp. It was a beautiful, and not too wide, of a river. there were a lot of trees along its shoreline. As we all got off our horses, I could hear a lot of moaning from the men about the long ride, mainly about their sore ears. It was almost humorous to hear how such tough men moan and groan. I rode up to the water's edge to let my horse drink and rest a while. All the horses had their heads in the water as I stood there and watched. Some of the men jumped right into the water and swam around in their clothes. I knew the sergeant didn't like the fact of his men soaking themselves in their uniforms, but he never said a word and just let them do it. The real West is a rugged place, and it's a good teacher if you are a willing student to learn about what it is really telling you. I noticed that most men were too stubborn to learn very much in this lifetime. I could see that it took a lot to break down the individual ego so that it could be used for the greater cause that life had for all of us. The water looked so good that I decided to jump in and take my once-in-a-while bath. It had been weeks since I had taken a natural bath. Real men didn't carry soap. They just scrubbed themselves up once in a while, and that was it. There was a lot of natural smell around, and all of us were part of it. After my swim in the river, the big hot sun was finally going down. It was as though it was not willing to do so, but it did. I liked the winters better out here near the big ocean. They are so much friendlier. My friends, Jess and Riley, are usually a funny pair. They like to joke around and sometimes get themselves into trouble. They came out of the water, and we made a fire for the night. The air was still warm as the sun began to set in the west. The late afternoons were the best time of the day. I could relax and think about what I wanted to do on the real side for the night. The true reality and the endless adventure that I experienced with it is always on my mind. It amazes me as I watch the outer drama of humans running around trying to figure out their lives, when all they really need is a guide like Rebazar. But humans like their egos more, and deciding how life should be instead of being guided by those who know. As we were sitting around the fire and not really saying a word, Jess began to talk. "I had this funny dream last night, Goldie. It seemed so real that I wanted to tell you about it," he said, acting rather shy. I smiled and said I would like to hear about it. It seemed to take place during the night. One moment I was sitting on the ground, and the next moment I was running after something or someone. It was dark in the dream, and I was running through the darkness, but I couldn't see where I was going. I was able to make my way around, but I never caught what I was after. Then it ended, and I woke up. I sat up for a while and wondered about it. I was actually sweating. "What do you think it meant, Goldie?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment, and then said, "It sounds like something in the future that you are chasing, but I'm not real sure what it is yet. It could be that something is about to happen. The real side is a mystery until we realise what it means or it exposes itself. But it will reveal what you need at the right time. Sometimes it is revealing, and other times it is evasive. How did you feel about the experience, Jess?" He looked at me and said, "It was rather frustrating, as I was running and not being able to get to what I was after. I just ran and ran, and that was it." I had to laugh a little bit within myself, because these two friends of mine hardly ever spoke about their real experiences. It's a good sign that you are paying attention to your nightly visions, Jess. Your Christian Bible contains the experiences of those who have had interesting dream experiences from the past, but most people do not pay attention to their dreams, I said. You have read the Bible, Goldie? Said Riley, with a funny look on his face. Yes, I have. I have read many books about various things. I like to learn about what is taking place here and then explore the real side of them. My dad taught me to pay attention to where I am at all the time. Now that I am with the white man, I constantly study different writings that pertain to my journey through life. I have read the Bible several times, but not in the literal sense that has become standard with the human viewpoint, but from the openness of seeing that it is a culmination of experiences from an era of time on earth, and that there are always broader horizons to be discovered. I only read the parts that relate to the reality, the great eagle. The Bible can be a good reference book for some, but the experiences that it contains are from a part of history that is long gone. Life is always new and greater, and the past can never replace the present. The past that once was will never be again, because there is always something better right now. This is why real experience is essential to perceive reality, as opposed to believing in documented ideas. Something like the idea of eating certain foods can be fun to discuss, but the actual eating of them is better and real. Just like your dream vision, Jess. If it would have happened thousands of years ago, you could have been in the Bible too. The great eagle is always in the here and now, not in the past or the non-existent future. The true reality is with you now, and trying to get your attention because you are part of it. That is what the man Jesus was talking about when he said that he was the light and the way. He did not mean it in the literal sense, he meant it in the true sense. Any one of us can be our own light and our own way if we choose to be. The same is true when he mentioned that he was the sun. We are all already that. He was also describing the various levels, or what he called the many mansions, which are the different heavens or areas of life, that most people know nothing about. The Bible is missing a whole lot of information about the real universes, and so that is why people are confused and unaware of what is really taking place within them while they are on this earth. Those that do study their good book do not even know where their heaven is. If they had real guidance, they would be shown, I said. I then looked at them, and I could tell that they were rather perplexed at what I was saying, so I decided to stop there, because I could see the look on their faces, which was one of an almost disbelief. Little Feather had a remark also, and that I may have said too much. Wow, that was very interesting, Goldie. Where did you learn all the things you know? Asked Jess, with a real intent. I first started learning from my mother. She is a very aware being. She would teach me as I was growing up about all the things that life is trying to tell us. She taught me how the animals and the birds talk to us. But most people can't understand what is being said to them, because of the way they have been taught and convinced about their surroundings, so they have cut themselves off from any communication with nature. The schools that have been invented here are for people that want to read about what others have decided for them. There is no real experience in only reading about something unless it can be put to use. Just a lot of mental agreements that sound good and make people think they have gained something. Once a person is exposed to the true reality, then everything begins to make sense. Life is so much bigger than a person's mind and imagination, and so, as we learn to take the risk to explore, more so than what most people cling to, then we soon discover how much bigger and better our life can be. The sun in the sky is a great example of being real, as it shines upon all, and all of us can see it. With our connection to a real life, the true reality that life is, teaches and speaks to us in its own unique way, that is not limited to the considerations and assumptions we have been accustomed to. What we have termed as nature, she said, is always demonstrating something wonderful to us, because the great eagle speaks through its children, those who are willing to become more aware. Most people look upon animals as dumb and without a soul, but they are just like you and me. They are real, and they are on their own journey until they reach the human position. I suddenly got an interesting comment from the cat and the horse on that one. I was shown once by my real guide that the feathers from the head-dress of the great eagle are all the same, but have different experiences that make up their lives. On this level, known as Earth, we appear different to each other, but there is no difference within the true reality of ourselves, because we are all from the same true source. There is only one real source. We are all the drops that make up the sea of life. That's where you and I come in. Some of us are more aware than others, but within ourselves we are all the same beings, each one of us. We are all unique in our own way, because the true reality is unique. You have accepted the role of just being human, and so now this is what you are, I said. I knew that I was giving them a lot, and so I decided to just relax for a while. The cat said it would be a good idea. I could see that they were wondering what I was talking about. All of us just sat there for the longest time and said nothing, and then they went to sleep. I sat back and thought about our trip back to the fort and fell into a light sleep. It was some time during the night that I heard something out in the distance. My parents taught me to listen closely to everything. I could wake myself up like a cat at any time if I had to. The sound was in the distance, and as I listened, it sounded like the footsteps of someone wearing soft shoes like the Indians do. Whoever they were, they would move a little, and then stop, as though they were listening to see if anyone was awake. I was not going to move and confront whoever they were. It was not my concern. The only idea I could come up with is they were someone who was going to come and rescue their friend. No matter. It was not my affair, no matter what happened. Then I remembered Jesse's dream. It could be that it would be his experience and that he would soon be living his dream. I decided to see what would take place and let things go the way they would. The footsteps continued, and I became unconcerned and fell back to sleep. I was suddenly on the unseen beach, where the sun is always shining brightly, and there are no intruders around. I realized I was here and the soldiers were on the earth, ready to go into their funny routine. I kept my attention on the surreal beauty of the ocean and the sky, and forgot about the earth entirely. Rebazar Tars appeared from somewhere, and came and sat by me on the sand. "Ha ha ha! Indian boy! You are very wise to let what will happen be as it will, he said, with a big smile. I had to laugh, because I was so happy to be with him again. You are the one that taught me to do so, I said, with a big smile on my face. We both laughed, and gazed out over the beautiful ocean of life. I loved this place, and it meant more to me than saving some horses from the Indians. I didn't want to go back and deal with what was going to take place. But then I was suddenly woken by a shout in our camp. "The prisoner has escaped!" shouted one of the soldiers, as I could faintly see the men running around to try and find someone. Jess and Riley jumped up, then ran off into the black nothingness. It was a dark night and very hard to see, just like in Jess's dream. I just sat and let the event take place. I could hear all kinds of sounds taking place as everyone was moving around. It was actually rather funny to hear the goofy noises and commotion of these guys. I learned a long time ago that to take part in these affairs was usually a waste of time, and what would come from it would be nothing but trouble. If someone were after me, it would be a different story, but this event was more humorous than anything. Rebazar Tars showed me the lifetimes that I had spent in turmoil. There were so many lives where I was the aggressor and also the hunted. He said those lives were a good lesson for the ones to come, but what I had accomplished was very little, and that they were really a waste of time. So much of what he taught me related to this very moment. It is a funny thing how the simplest of lessons can take lifetimes. Again, it is the ego of the human side that is so resistant to letting go of worthless assumptions. Most of the people that I have met in this life are not interested in taking the time to learn about their true reality, so they continue to come back to the earth and start all over again each lifetime, without remembering they have been here before. These are the people that do and don't believe in something. They haven't figured out the fact that there is no such thing as belief. There is only what is real. I could hear all the shouting and the running around in the dark as the men seemed to be panicking about their little chase idea. It was so funny listening to all these grown men trying to find someone in the dark. Jess was now out there somewhere living his dream. He was running through the dark and trying to find the prisoner like all the others. Everyone was gone from the camp. I listened closely, but I couldn't hear anyone nearby. It was a very silent night, except for the sounds of the men moving in the distance. I continued to sit and think about the unseen worlds, and then I decided to go back to sleep and leave the earth. I was suddenly back on the beach again, and this time my flying horse was there at the shoreline and walking through the water. Then I noticed that there was a woman with my horse. I walked over to them and noticed that she was a beautiful blonde woman in what appeared to be an all-white Indian dress. She was petting the horse and then looked up at me. "Hello, Goldie," she said, with a big smile on her beautiful face. "It's good to see you again." I was a little puzzled at what she was saying, and then I asked her, "Do you know me?" I said, rather perplexed. She just smiled and said, "Of course I do. We have known each other for a long time, lifetimes as a matter of fact." Now I was really beside myself. What was life bringing me that I couldn't remember? She began to laugh, and then said, "You can't remember, so I will help you. You and I were man and wife in a distant past life. I was taken away by outlaws and tortured. It was either me or our daughter, so I chose to go. You were out fighting and defending our village. I was taken to the 7th level by Gopal Das, and I have been there ever since. I have already met you in the future also, but you will not know this yet, but soon you will. I stood there amazed, like a child, at what she was telling me. I felt like I really was in a dream. I don't know what to say, I said. She smiled and said, You are funny, Goldie. Some day you'll know, but for now, this is your life to live as an Indian on the earth, and eventually you and I will be together again. There is the real part of you, the real you, that knows what is taking place, and then there is the part of you that is going through the lower maze of life to try and find the answers to your own true reality. Rebazar and the other guides are preparing you for a big event that will take place in your future, actually your next lifetime. You will get all the assistance you need to succeed into your future event. I wanted to be a part of your training, so that you would have many options to consider. All of what she was saying sounded very interesting. It was like a roadmap to a real adventure. Here was a new and refreshing view of greater possibilities. Like a kid, I was excited. How is it that you can see things that far into the future? I asked with a real curiosity. From the 7th level of the real universes, all events are already basically laid out, because all there is can only be real. All things must come to the end result, the perfection of reality itself. Your free will does come into play as the events unfold, and the opportunities are always there, but for you, your intent is so strong that it will carry you through to your destiny. Your nature is exceptional, so therefore the position that is waiting for you will be the same, so exceptional that very few will see it. The real guides have a formula they go by that is realised through them from the great reality, which is known as being isness. It is the ultimate position with the all is. There exists the privileged position of the mantle of the isness, which the real guides only give to specially trained individuals that have the greatest of hearts and the boldest of intentions. Right now, Rebazar has the position because he is the brave one. Your training will continue until you reach the real position, and your mission is over, and then you will once again enter into the real universes where I am, she said, as she smiled with her beautiful face. Who are you? I asked, still wondering if this were all true or not, and was I really dreaming this time? My name is Shis Hara Yu, Goldie, which you already know in your true self, she replied with a smile. That is a beautiful name. I hope that I can remember it, I said, as I was looking into her beautiful blue and green eyes. I will be around from time to time. There is a lot of preparing that is being done from the unseen side while you are still on the earth. There is so much that I could tell you, but you'll get all that you need from the real guides and what you will be going through on earth. My heart is always with you, and I will see you soon, she said, and then left, as though she was the wind.